Anxious to get into the Word with you today. I want you to turn to Acts chapter 4. And we got a little confused last Sunday. I thought there was only that we would end this section today, and we would move into the Sermon on the Mount again, which we're going to be dealing with Matthew chapter 5, verse 21 through 26. We're going to start in on that section of the Sermon on the Mount. And I thought this would be the end of this, but there's actually going to be one more Sunday. So we're looking at verse 4 of chapter 4 of the book of Acts. Let's bow together in prayer. Lord, we anticipate you speaking to us today. It's always fresh. It's always new. We're not just here to rehash old experiences, but to experience you new and fresh and alive in our lives. And we lay at your feet today. Oh God, living word, written word, grip us. Grip us, we pray thee. Would it be too much to ask? No, it wouldn't of you. That you would literally deal with every single heart on the level that you know we need to be dealt with. And that you wouldn't let any of us in this place, we've come on purpose, and that you wouldn't let any of us in this place go out of here without saying, wow, God spoke to me, and I'm responding to you. Include me in that. I beg you, I pray you. In Jesus' name we ask it. Amen. Simple outline in chapter 4, verse 1 down through verse 4. Solomon's porch is taking place. Peter is giving a phenomenal exhortation about Jesus. And in this exhortation, of course, there is a lame beggar who has been healed standing there, and he becomes the center of attention. And of course, what Peter is doing is he's taking all the attention off of the miracle and off of himself, and he's placing it all on Jesus. And he gives this tremendous exhortation about the person of Jesus. It's just great. Right in the middle of this exhortation, the alliance comes, and that's verse 1. So in our outline, verse 1 is the alliance. They're made up of the priest, the captain of the temple, and the Sadducees. And they, of course, are agitated, which is verse 2. They became greatly disturbed that they taught the people and preached in Jesus the resurrection from the dead. And it wasn't just the resurrection, although the Sadducees didn't believe in the resurrection. Pharisees did, so they argued about that all the time. So it wasn't just the resurrection that was the issue. It was in Jesus, the resurrection from the dead. So that became the central issue. And then in verse 3, you have the arrest. Of course, they've marched through. There maybe have been 50, 75 of them in number. And they marched through the great crowd, which probably numbered in the 10,000 bracket, or at least over 5,000. And they marched through that crowd, came to Solomon's porch, grabbed a hold of the apostles, and brought them down, arrested them, laid hands on them, put them into custody until the next day, because it was already evening and the Sanhedrin, the council, had shut down. So when you come to verse 4, you are now going to be given a report. It's the aftermath of this whole thing, and it's the report of what has taken place, the results of all that had gone on due to Peter's exhortation. And it says in verse 4, however, many of those who heard the word believed, and the number of men came to be about 5,000. In this verse 4, this whole passage is an interruption because the church has been finding favor all of this time. Great things have been happening. People have been getting saved. Church has been growing. Pentecost has happened. People in Jerusalem, miracles are taking place. So people in Jerusalem are responding positively to the church. So this is an interruption to all of that. So what's going down is this is the first smell, the beginning point of the very essence of persecution that's going to spill from this point on all the way through the book of Acts. So persecution is being highlighted. And it's going to get worse even in this chapter. As it begins to unfold and finally into chapter 5. So all of these chapters are focusing on the issue of persecution. But as you come to verse 4, which is this aftermath, there ends up to be two significant ideas, concepts that I want to lay on you. We're only going to do one this morning. But you see it immediately in verse 4. However, many of those who heard the word believed. So you got two things going on conceptually. One is the idea of hearing. The other is the idea of believing. And of course, they are connected, so you cannot separate them, except you have to in order to talk about them. So you got this emphasis on these two factors, hearing and believing. And I want to talk to you about that today. Let's start with this, the emphasis on hearing, the catching of it. As you look at verse 4, however, many of those who heard the word believed. So you've got this hearing idea. Now, to get the emphasis of this, I want to give you a little grammar structure, which I know just excites you. Just really excites you. This is not hard. Obviously, the verb is believed. It's the main verb. They believed. Those who heard the word believed. So believed is the main verb. It is in the aorist tense, which we have nothing like it in all of English. It's the non-tense. And we've talked about this so much, but it's the non-tense. In other words, I'm not telling you when this happened. It's a total rejection of all when. Not in the past, not in the present. We're not even talking about that. Not in the future, not interested in when it happened. What we're focusing on is the fact that it's happening. We're focusing on the act of believing itself. So it's a highlighting, a uplifting, a viewing of the importance of the belief idea, that they believed. And the total focus is on the action of the belief itself. We're not talking about when. It's in the active voice, which tells you that they are participating in it. So you can't believe unless you participate in it. So you got to get involved in this. See, you got to open up to this. You got to respond to this. You don't just, believe accidentally. You open up in response. You open up in receptivity. You open up in your mind and your inner heart. You seek, you long, and in that seeking and longing, belief begins to come. So you participate in the act of belief. It's in the indicative, which means it is a simple statement of fact. Nobody's arguing about it. We're not focusing on when it happened. We're focusing on belief itself and the fact that you are opening up and participating in the response of belief as it's laid out for us. That's the main verb. Now the subject is easy because in the Greek, as in the Spanish language, you have the subject is indicated, the pronoun is indicated at the end of the verb itself. And it's the third person plural, which would be, in this case, they. So the subject is they. You look so excited. The subject is they, and the verb is believed. They believed. Now, why didn't he just say that? They believed. That would be enough. We got it. It's okay. There's 5,000 men. We know who they are. There are 5,000 men who are at the Solomon's porch. They're listening to Peter. They got this down. They opened up. They received. They responded. They responded by belief. So we got this down. They believed. But he's not satisfied with that. He says, you're not getting the whole picture. And I got to paint the whole picture for you. In fact, I want to emphasize something that may be even stronger than the idea of belief. Maybe even more important than belief itself. It's the main verb. I got that. But let me highlight the idea of hearing. And he gives us this verb, akuo, this verb of hearing. He says, however, many of those who heard is one Greek word. Those who heard. It's a verb. But it's not the main verb. It's what we know as a participle, which means it is an adjective modifying they. So he doesn't just say they believed. He says, I want to tell you who they are. We say we know who they are. They're 5,000 men. They were hanging out at Solomon's porch. They saw the miracle. We got all that. We don't need any more information. No, he says, what I want to emphasize is, I want to emphasize that this 5,000, they, the ones who are believing, are ones who are hearing. So you could literally translate this, the hearing ones believed. Wasn't just they, wasn't just a group of guys that hung out, wasn't some people, oh, there's a miracle, wow. It wasn't that. It was the ones who heard, the hearing ones who believed. The hearing ones. Now, he adds to that the word many, which is an adjective, so we understand that. So it's the many hearing ones who believed. Which indicates, and we'll talk about this in a minute, indicates there's some guys who heard that didn't believe. We'll talk about that in a minute. But the emphasis, do you see, is on the idea of hearing. And hearing is so tied to the idea of believing that you say, wow, I wonder if you can really believe without hearing. Are you listening? Are you listening? It's interesting. It's really piqued my interest. It's interesting when you come to the New Testament. The emphasis is not on seeing. The emphasis is on hearing. If you search the verbs, there's more verbs used for seeing than there are for hearing. But the emphasis isn't on seeing. The emphasis is always on hearing. Isn't it significant that in the crucifixion of Jesus, we are given no physical description to look at for the crucifixion? In Matthew 26 and 27, longest chapters of Matthew, just phenomenal chapters, all on the crucifixion, the only detailed information we have about the actual, literal, physical crucifixion that we could see, the only physical details we have is, he says, then they crucified him. We don't get to see the nail and how many times the hammer came down. He doesn't describe that because he isn't interested in you knowing about that. He doesn't tell how many times they missed the nail and hit his hands. They don't even bring that up. We don't get to see that because that doesn't matter. See, the crucifixion is not about the seen world. It's about the unseen world. And what is echoing through the realms of eternity at this moment. The emphasis is in the crucifixion then. It's not on seeing physically. It's on hearing the great truth about what is actually going on in this hour. Don't you think it's interesting that in the gospel accounts, oh, I wish I could have been a gospel writer. I would have described Jesus down to the T. I would have told you he's 6'4", man. Broad-shouldered. Give you a little example. Broad-shouldered. Hey, could bench press. Wow. His hair is long. His eyes are blue. He's got this chin that's, and he's handsome, and he's got a wart on his right toe. See, those are all, isn't it interesting? No physical description of Jesus at all. Why? It doesn't matter. Because that's about seeing. And the gospel is not about seeing. The gospel is about hearing. Now we have this Isaiah chapter 53 verse 2 thing, where he's writing about Jesus suffering, and he's the lamb that's been slaughtered, and all the giving of his life, and all that he's going to do as a sacrifice lamb. And he describes him as he has no form or comeliness, and when we see him, there is no beauty that we should desire him. Isn't that a description of Jesus? If you took that literally, you'd say Jesus is probably 5'5", handicapped, ugly. But this is a description of his crucifixion. And any man hanging on a cross, regardless of what he did look like, is going to answer this description. There's nothing about him in this crucifixion that we would desire. His eyes are swollen. His beard is yanked out by its roots. His face is mutilated and out of shape. His hair is filled with dried blood. We are repulsed by it. That's what he's saying. And he's not physically describing Jesus in terms of how he looked. Generally, he's describing this crucifixion. Because again, the emphasis is not on seeing. Don't you think this is remarkable? Because our whole world, folks, is all wrapped up in physically seeing. Hey, I can't see it, I don't believe it. I'll believe it when I see it. See, I want to handle it. I want to measure it. I want to pound on it. See, I want to see the results of it. It's all physical and seeing. But when you come to the New Testament, a whole new deal comes to you. This is not about hearing him. This is not about seeing him. This is all about hearing him. Now, why would that be true? One reason why that's true, in Jesus' culture, the Greek mythology, the Gnostics, if you don't know about that, don't worry about it. These people were focused, their whole culture was focused on seeing. In fact, they were so strong on this, they proposed the idea that hearing can confuse you. So if all you do is hear, you'll probably get off and confused. And what will keep you straight is seeing. So they proposed visions. Seeing. See, they were all wrapped up in seeing, not hearing. And along comes, isn't that just like Jesus and the Gospels? Along comes the Gospels, folks, and all of a sudden, what are we into? We're not into visions. We're into I'm hearing him. He's speaking to me. What does he have to say? And if you're into seeing, and if you have any inclination within you that says, oh, if I could only been back there with Jesus and his disciples and actually saw him, what? That was never the emphasis. The emphasis was, oh, we got to hear him. Did you hear what he said? Did you get a hold of the truth? Did it come through to your life? Did you hear him? Well, you say, I would have liked to have been there to hear him. Oh, good night, friend. That's what you've got on your hands. You are hearing him. He is speaking to you. That's what we're talking about in the passage, that there is this living word and the written word, and man, he is here speaking in this hour more clearly than he's ever spoken before, and you can hear him. Amen? You can hear him. Because see, the gospel, the emphasis is upon the idea of hearing. Hearing. Now, everywhere you go in the scriptures, there are events taking place which are seeing events, but the reason for the seeing events they're always based on, and the reason for them is hearing. Moses, burning bush. God in the bush, speaking. It's interesting that in that scene, you would think there would be a description of, oh, I saw his face in the flames. No, nothing like that. Because it isn't about seeing, it's about hearing. In fact, it's Exodus chapter 3, verse 6. It says in this scene, moreover, he said, this is God speaking, I am the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look. See, what impacted him in the burning bush was not what he saw. He hid his face, and what impacted him was, oh, what he heard. God spoke to me. Wow, I'm hearing. I'm hearing. I'm hearing the voice of God. It was in Exodus chapter 33, verse 20 that he said, you cannot see my face. Get off that, will you? Get off of that. But I want to see. Get off of that. What do you look like? Get off of that. Doesn't matter. For no man shall see me and live. Uzziah died, the king, and he had been his idol and been in on the kingship thing, but Isaiah was brokenhearted because his whole career was messed up now, and he comes down to the temple, and he has a vision. And it says this in Isaiah 6:1. In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord sitting on a throne, high and lifted up, and the train of his robe filled the temple. Well, there you go. That's all about seeing. Isaiah had a vision and saw the Lord. Okay, yeah. But as you get into it, the seeing part is so diminished and played down, and what's upplayed, that the seeing becomes a platform for the hearing. And Isaiah's life is absolutely transformed. He finds mission, he finds ministry, he finds direction for his life, and his whole life is absolutely reversed and turned around and refocused. And how did it all happen? Because the word of the Lord came to the man, and he heard. So I'm trying to tell you, the emphasis is not on seeing. The emphasis is on hearing. Are you listening? Now, in the passage, verse 4. Obviously, since many of those who heard the word believe, you got two things going on. Number one, you've got a group who's hearing and believing, but then you've got another group indicated in the passage, and that is they heard, but they didn't believe. So obviously, there was a quality going on in the hearing of the ones who believed that wasn't involved in what was going on with those who didn't believe. So hearing in this context and in the scriptures has some kind of a spatial quality about it, has some kind of an undertow to it, has something. See, this idea of believing and hearing are so intimately connected that you can't believe without hearing, but it isn't just hearing data and information. There's something going on here that is a quality that when you really hear, which produces belief, when the hearing really produces belief, there is a quality in that hearing that automatically brings about the belief. So what you ought to be after is not just the believing, although that's a good thing, but not just the believing, but, if I could just hear. What is that quality? What is that essence? I think about you folks, and myself as guests, but think of all the sermons we've endured. Did you ever count them up? How many times you've sat through church? I've been in church all my life. Think of the hours and hours on hours I've listened to somebody yelling at me. All the data and information I accumulated or didn't accumulate. This hearing thing. But see, it isn't just hearing, folks. It isn't just, I was there. What did he say? Well, I slept through most of it. But hey, guess he talked about Jesus. See, it isn't that. See, it's way beyond that, folks. It's this, there's a quality going on within the hearing that produces this overwhelming idea of belief that's in the passage. What's that quality? Brings us to the second idea. It's not only an emphasis on hearing in our passage, an emphasis on hearing, but there's an emphasis on him. Did you see it? Look at it, look at it, look at it. Verse 4, however, many of those who heard the word believed. They heard the word. Now, I don't want to violate the passage, but the Greek word for word there, obviously, is the word logos. And you're familiar with the term. John 1:1, in the beginning was the Word. Same word. Was the Word. And the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So Jesus, we understand, is the Logos, the Word. And we've described that before. So here's Jesus, the Word. Now, is he in this passage referring to Jesus in verse 5, or is he just referring to the words that came out of the lips of the apostle? The word that he gave in exhortation. Doesn't matter. Yeah, it doesn't matter. If you say, hey, I don't think he was referring to Jesus here in referring to the Word, I think he was referring to what came out of the lips of Peter. Okay, let's go back and find out what it was that came out of the lips of Peter. It was phenomenal. Do you realize that the word Jesus or Christ, if you go back to his exhortation in chapter 3, you know what you'll find out? The word Jesus or the word Christ shows up 5 times in 15 verses. That's a third. 11 times he uses a pronoun that is in direct reference to Jesus. That's 16 times, right? 5 times, 11 times, 16 times. 8 times there are other titles like Prince of Life that directly refer to Jesus. So that's 16 plus 8, that's 24 times in 15 verses. Peter is referring to the person of Jesus. So what do you think came out of his mouth? It was all about Jesus. So I propose to you in light of that, when you come to however, many of those who heard the Word, that the Word is the idea of Jesus. I know, this is a mystical concept, hard for some of you to get a hold of. But we've been talking about it over and over again. See, it isn't just preaching. We dealt with this in the teaching and preaching of verse 2. See, something had happened in teaching and preaching that had never gone on in Jesus' day before. And Jesus started it, and the apostles were accomplishing it as well. And it was never, the Sadducees and the Pharisees and all of their teaching, they didn't have anything like this going on, people. But along came an apostle who stood up, and as he began to teach about the resurrection, the actual resurrected Lord showed up. I'm not talking physically. They didn't see him. But the presence of, and took the truth and literally drove it to the inner heart of the individuals. And they heard because they heard him. And it wasn't data. It wasn't Bible study. There was a mystical happening between the living word and the written word. And as the written word was proposed, the living word began to flow in the written word. And the written word became alive in the hearts and the minds of individuals. And before they knew it, they were literally feeling impacted by, moved by, massaged by the essence of Jesus. So this was never about just hearing data. This was about hearing. The quality is, I'm hearing him. See, we've got to have that. This is a school of practical ministry, you know. And we've got to have that. Everybody who preaches has got to have that. They've got to have, don't tell me ideas. I don't want to know just concepts. See, I'm not interested in just data. Don't give me just a nice Bible study. Don't just whip through, well, the Greek says this, the Hebrew says this. Well, whoopee, who cares? See, that isn't what I want to go out of here with. What I want to go out of here with, I want to go out of here with my soul massaged by the essence of the Word who's whispering in my ear. And what he says may not have anything to do with what the loudmouth preacher even talked about. But the Word becomes alive. And we hear. You get that? Boy, that's important in the passage. That's really important. There is the parable, you know, of the sower. And it's a great parable. Jesus told the parables of the kingdom. And as he was talking about the parables of the kingdom, he started the parable of the sower, the explanation of it in Matthew 13:18. He said, therefore, hear, same word as what we've got here. Hear the parable of the sower. And then he began to explain to his disciples what the parable was all about. And in his explanation, he gave explanation to the first soil. You remember what it was? The wayside, the pathway. It's hard. Seed has been sown, sits on the hard pathway, and he says in Matthew 13:19, hear the word of the kingdom. He's the one who hears the word of the kingdom and does not understand it. Then the wicked one comes and snatches away what was sown in his heart. And the word understand, oh, I want you to get this. The word understand becomes a part of the hearing concept. He hears and does not understand. So you can't hear in this context without understanding. Because the hearing that is the interaction of the living word is an interaction that brings understanding. What is understanding? It's two Greek words put together. This is hilarious. Two Greek words put together. Soon, which is the idea of together, something coming together, and hami, which is the idea of to put. It's the picture of a puzzle. You know, all these different pieces, and we're putting them together. That's understanding. So what is he saying? He says, here's this word, here's this seed, here's the word in our passage, verse 4. Many of those who heard the word, here's the word, but it's not data, it's not information, it's not just, I'll tell you the historical context of this. It isn't that. It's that in this, there's this living Jesus who's literally coming to my life, and he's literally reaching out, and through his word, the truth, not data, but the truth of who he is, he's reaching into my life, and he's putting this, oh, that piece doesn't fit there, Manley, put it over here. And he's just putting the puzzle of my life together. Because I'm hearing. That's all involved in the hearing. Because I'm understanding. My life is coming together, and it's fitting. He went on in the explanation of that parable to give the good soil. You know how he explains the good soil? Oh, this is so phenomenal. Look, it's in Matthew 13:23. He uses all three of these key words. He says, but he who receives who receives seed on the good ground is he who hears, akuo, the word and understands, suhimi, understands it, who indeed bears, poieo, fruit, and produces such 100-fold, some 60-fold, and some 30-fold. So who is the good soil? The one who hears, not data, not information, but the one whose life, somehow in the hearing, there is the essence of the presence of Christ, the living word, who comes and takes his written word and begins to massage the life until he's fitting the pieces of the puzzle together and shaping you, and you're getting a whole new, that's the one that produces poieos. Man, that's what I want to be. Oh, I got to have that. See, I'm not interested in entertainment. I could still be in my PJs at home watching TV if I wanted that. See, what am I interested in? I'm interested in somehow understanding, but not just, yeah, I got that figured out. I'm not interested in that because I've tried that and I can't pull that off. Because even when I don't understand, I don't understand. See, I understand my wife. I do. I understand her perfectly. I know when this takes place, this is how she's going to respond to that. I understand that. But do you think I understand that? See, I don't want to just understand ideas. I don't want to understand theology. See, I want to understand it. Oh, he's come. I'm not seeing, I'm hearing. And in the hearing, he's come, and he's literally taking my life, and he's literally putting the pieces together, and out of that is coming this. I don't know if you're getting it or not. Let me give you an illustration. This couple got married. We married them, and really wanted to get them in the church, and help them in their spiritual life and establishing a proper home and all of that. after the wedding, of course, they went on a honeymoon, which is okay. And when the whole honeymoon was over, they were back to jobs and back to so forth and life itself. And so I went to call on him, banged on the door. Guy opened the door. Husband opened the door. He came, asked me to come in, and I noticed in his hand he had this rubber ball, and he was squeezing it like this, and just constantly doing that. And he said, "Come on in." I said, "Well, I'm glad you're back. Just wanted to come and visit you and see how you're doing and how the honeymoon went, and it was all well." "Oh yeah, great," he said. And he said, "Come in here, I want to show you something." Took me into this little den thing. And up there was this shelf, heavily supported, had to be, because there were all these trophies. You know what they were? Bowling trophies. He had them lined up, man. I said, "Whoa, I'm impressed." He said, "Let me tell you about them." And he started in on this one, and he told me how, and it came right down to, and we need one, and one strike, it's in. Hey, and he won the trophy. And then there was the second one, and the third one, and about the 15th one, we were still, an hour and a half later, we were still, and he was going through all, and all the time he was doing this ball thing. I looked over on his desk, and there were all of these magazines about bowling, and techniques of bowling and manuals on bowling and how to bowl and all this stuff on bowling. I said, "Wow." And all the time he's flexing this, and I say, "What's this rubber ball thing?" "Oh, strengthen that bowling hand." "Oh, yes, sir, strengthening that bowling hand." I said, "Well, wow, that's something." I said, "I would like to see you Wednesday night." He said, "Well, no, can't do that." He said, "We have bowling practice on Wednesday night." I said, "Well, I'd like to see you on the weekend then. You could come on Sunday." "Well, I can't do that," he says. "Hey, we're in bowling tournaments." Come on. Anything wrong with bowling? No, except I'm no good at it. That's the only thing wrong with it. Is bowling sinful? No. Nothing wrong with bowling. What's the problem here? Well, let me ask you. What is he hearing? I'm not talking about what he's seeing. Well, he sees bowling pins. No, I'm not talking about what he's seeing. I'm talking about what is his life hearing? What has become so powerful that he's responding to, opening to, so powerful in his life that it's come right down into the depth of his inner being, and it's literally shaping and putting the pieces of his life together in the puzzle and shaping his whole existence? Well, it's bowling. "Well, I'm not bad, preacher." Didn't say you were. Let's all confess we're all good. Yay. Okay, that's settled. But let me ask you what you're listening to. "Oh, I listen to Christian radio." Not talking about that. Come on. I'm asking you. What are you hearing? What is it that's actually, listen. Oh, Jesus. The things I've heard, God, the things I've allowed to come to the depths of my heart and shape me. I've allowed materialism to so override my life, God, that the wrinkles on my brow were dollar signs. My life was in the shape of a dollar bill. What am I listening to, God? What do I hear? Hey, Jesus, I'm open to you. Hey, Jesus, I want you in my life. Hey, Jesus, you don't have to show up in appearance. I don't care what you look like, God. I'm better off not seeing you. I got that from the Scriptures. It's okay. And I know, Jesus, one day I will see you, and that'll be fine. But, hey, for right now, I'm quite willing, Jesus, just to listen to you. Just all that you are, would you just infiltrate my life? Would you just come? Would you living word? Would you just begin to talk to my insides? Would you just begin to take the pieces of the puzzle of my living, and would you just begin to form them together and put them in the right slot? Would you just begin to paint the picture of your design for my living, God? I've listened to so many. In the name of Jesus, I'm turning my hearing aid off to every sound except yours. And the voices of my body drive, and the voices of the systems of our world, and for some of us, God, we've been shaped by the traditions of our past. We've been shaped by the heritage of our parents. Do you want to say something to us today? I'm listening. I'm listening. Let it produce belief that produces fruit. Heads are bowed, moments of seeking. Hey, this is this is not a finger in your face, folks. This is not a bawling out. This is not put you in your place kind of thing. This is an encouragement. This is strictly personal. We're not trying to probe, find out. Nobody's accusing. We're not even, hey, we're all good, so nobody's looking at you saying, oh, he's been bad. No, we're not into that. This is about each one of us personally tuning our ears anew and afresh, our inner hearts, responding to the speaking of the living word. As he begins to take his written word and literally apply it to our lives, and we begin to see and hear. And more than see, we hear and grasp and understand. And he begins to put the pieces together. Oh, will you listen to him? Will you listening to him? Will you tune in like you've never tuned in before? Will you give yourself to this like you've never? Would you make a commitment? Would you, in the depth of your heart, would you just respond and say, Jesus, I'm wide open, man. Come on, talk to me. And he's going to talk to you in a variety of ways. Yeah, burning bush someplace, probably. I don't know. Whatever. But when it gets done, it won't be what you see. It'll be what you hear. And what involves itself, what your response to that involvement, which allows him to literally put the pieces of that you would understand and come together as a whole person. Come on, listen to him. Listen to him. So if you'd like to slip out and kneel, that'd be fine. I'm going to do that. Because, oh, Jesus, I want to hear you. I want to hear you. I'm listening. Be obedient.